She came out. I'm sorry. Just, one day you're swimming in the pool and the next day it's all gone. But
Hollywood icon James Woods explodes in fury, branding Governor Gavin Newsom a blithering idiot after devastating Los Angeles fires engulfed his home. The fiery rant has everyone talking. Here's what went down in this dramatic showdown. James Woods speaks out after devastating wildfire. James Woods, a famous actor known for speaking his mind and having strong views, lost someone very close to him in the terrible California wildfires of early 2025. His Pacific Palisades home was one of the thousands of buildings that caught fire. It had been a safe place for him and a sign of security in his life. Not only did this terrible event leave Woods dealing with the loss of his property, but it also made him speak out against what he saw as systemic failures that led to the disaster. Woods' story became a symbol for a larger talk about the crisis. It showed how even the wealthiest neighborhoods are, and started arguments about government, infrastructure, and being ready for emergencies. His answer, which was both personal and harsh in its criticism of state and local leaders, showed how sadness and responsibility can go together in a powerful way. There was a lot of damage in Woods' Pacific Palisades neighborhood after the flames that burned through California. His house and many others in the area were turned to ash by the fire that could not be stopped. For Woods, this was more than just losing a building. It was the end of a place full of memories, personal items, and things that could never be replaced. After the event, Woods talked freely about how scary it was. He gave a very clear description of what he saw. There were fire trucks close, alarms were going off, but there was no water to put out the fire. The fire hydrants in his neighborhood were dry, so firemen couldn't do anything while the homes burned. According to Woods, this revelation showed that the state's infrastructure and disaster management systems had a major flaw. The fact that there was no water pressure in one of the wealthiest parts of the country made Woods very angry. He couldn't believe that a state with some of the highest taxes in the country couldn't provide something so simple in an emergency. He thought this wasn't just one event, but a sign of a bigger problem with the way California is run. James Woods lost everything in the California wildfires. But do you know what he did next? His explosive response will shock you. James Woods slams California leaders after wildfire devastation. Woods didn't hold back when he wanted to say what he thought about the leaders he thought were to blame for the mistakes. He was very critical of California Governor Gavin Newsom, calling him a blithering idiot for what he saw as repeated mistakes in fire safety and disaster planning. Woods said that Newsom's government had always put political goals ahead of practical answers, leaving people open to disasters like the one that destroyed his house. In addition to Newsom, Woods also attacked Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass, saying she ignored important infrastructures and abused her power. He talked about what he thought were the wrong goals, like how too much focus was being put on diversity and inclusion efforts instead of important services like fire safety and emergency response. For Woods, these mistakes weren't just mistakes in how things were done. They were also breaches of trust that had real, terrible effects on the people who were touched. Woods' public comments went beyond criticizing specific people and addressing problems with the whole system. He said that the fires were caused by less money for fire departments, plants that weren't being cared for, and reservoirs that weren't being used enough or were being handled badly. He said that these things came together to make a perfect storm that let the flames do damage that had never been seen before. Even though there was a lot of damage, Woods found times of kindness and strength that gave him hope. As the neighborhood burned down, people came together to help each other, showing a level of unity that went beyond political and social differences. Woods told stories about neighbors who, no matter their views or backgrounds, worked together to protect each other. One story that really touched me was about a close 94-year-old man with advanced dementia. The old man was in danger because he was stuck in his house as the fire got closer until neighbors came to help. Together, they made sure he could get out of the building safely, putting their safety at risk to do so. Woods thought that this brave and kind act showed the best in people in times of trouble. Woods also talked about how fellow actor Walton Goggins surprised him by being very kind. Even though they hadn't talked in years, Goggins called out to offer Woods and his family a safe place to stay. They had a safe place to stay during their time of needs, thanks to Goggins's key and security codes. Woods thanked the person for their kindness and said that the acts of kindness like this showed how important community and relationships are during times of trouble. A lot of people talked about how ready California is for natural disasters after Woods' personal loss and his harsh criticism of the state's leaders. Many residents agreed with him and said they were angry about what they saw as bad management and mixed-up goals. There were a lot of comments and debates on social media sites. Some people supported Woods' call for responsibility, while others criticized his words. The lack of water flow in particular became a sign of the bigger problems with how the state responded to the wildfires. People in the state, which is known for its wealth and resources, wondered how such a basic problem could happen. For many, this was a wake-up call that showed how important it is to spend on infrastructure and make government work better. People are also talking again about the role of leadership in situations like this because of what Woods said. His criticisms of Newsom and Bass made it clear that politicians should put disaster preparedness and real-world answers ahead of their personal goals. Some people thought that what he said was too harsh, but others saw it as a call to action for real change. In addition to the political and structural effects, Woods' story showed how the wildfires hurt people. A lot of people had to leave their homes and lost their belongings and sense of safety. Losing his home was a very sad event for Woods, but it also made him think about how it affected his society as a whole. In the midst of the destruction, stories of strength and hope came to light. When neighbors lost everything, they came together to help each other out and found strength in what they had been through. A lot of people's attention moved from losing things to keeping life and community together. A blithering idiot. James Woods' tears into California's leaders after the wildfires. But could he be right? Do you know what's really happening behind the scenes? The wildfire crisis that exposed California's failures. One of the most upsetting things about the flames in 2025 was that many fire hydrants were empty. In many of the affected areas, including Woods' neighborhood, fire trucks showed up ready to fight the flames, but couldn't because the water hydrants were dry. This shocking finding made clear what Woods meant when he said that California's infrastructure had failed in a catastrophic way. Firefighters and residents were useless as flames destroyed homes and property because there was no water in the fire hydrants. Firefighters had to stand by and watch as the fires got out of hand, unable to do their jobs. Many people, including Woods, thought this situation could have been avoided or made less bad with better planning and use of resources. Reports from all over the state showed how bad the problem was in many places. People in other areas also said that firefighters were not able to get water when they needed it most. The situation brought to light systemic neglect, especially when it comes to keeping and improving important infrastructure. In a state known for its wealth and high taxes, not being able to provide water during an emergency became a strong sign of a bigger problem with the way that the government was running. The empty fire hydrants were not an isolated problem. They were part of a bigger pattern of neglect that had been going on for years. Woods said that California's water management systems had problems for a long time that had been ignored despite many warnings. Reservoirs, which are an important part of the state's water infrastructure, were said to be underused or not well taken care of. The state wasn't ready for the needs of a wildfire emergency because of this. Along with poor water management, the problem was made worse by a lack of investment in fire safety measures. The wildfire spread quickly and got stronger because of overgrown plants, dry brush, and fire breaks that weren't being kept. Even though experts told people to pay attention to these important places, they were often ignored, which made the fires worse. Decisions about the budget also had a big impact on the systemic problems. Over the years, fire services have been cut back, leaving them short on money and unable to handle large-scale emergencies. Because the state had fewer resources, such as firefighters, older equipment, and training programs that weren't up to par, they weren't able to successfully fight the wildfires. What really happened in Pacific Palisades? James Woods has questions, and the truth might leave you speechless. Do you know what's next? Criticism of Governor Gavin Newsom. Woods was very critical of Governor Gavin Newsom, whom he believed was personally to blame for the state's problems with fire safety and management. Several bad wildfire seasons had happened in California while Newsom was governor, but Woods said the state had not learned from these experiences. Newsom's handling of water management policies was one of Woods's main complaints. He said that bad management and wrong goals had taken money and time away from important things, like making sure there was enough water for emergencies. The dry fire hydrants were a stark reminder of how these rules hurt people in real, terrible ways. Woods was also critical of the state for not doing more to stop the flames. He said that the fact that growing plants weren't cut down and fire breaks weren't maintained showed that the plan and execution were bad. Woods said these mistakes were part of a culture of reactive government that put political goals ahead of real-world answers. What people didn't agree on was how Newsom handled the situation. Woods was one of the critics who said the governor wasn't leading in a fast and effective way. Key failures that made the wildfires worse were said to be slow deployment of resources, bad coordination between agencies, and a lack of accountability. At the city level, Mayor Karen Bass of Los Angeles also got a lot of bad press. Woods talked about how he thought the city's government was not ready and wasn't leading well. He said that neighborhoods were at risk of disaster because the city didn't take care of its facilities, like fire hydrants and water systems. A big worry was that Los Angeles Fire Department's budget was being cut. Over the years, the city's fire department has lost money, which means it can't properly prepare for situations. Firefighters said they were short on people, tools, and resources, all of which made it harder for them to put out the wildfire successfully. Los Angeles has a big problem with dry hydrants because its water systems were old and weren't getting regular repair. In places like Pacific Palisades, people said that a lot of the infrastructure was broken, including fire hydrants that wouldn't work at crucial times. These mistakes made it even clearer that more money needs to be put into basic services. It was also called into question how Bass led during the crisis. Many people were upset that she wasn't in the city when the flames first started. A lot of people in the area thought her values were off, especially since there was so much damage going on at the time. Bass supported what she did, but people still thought she wasn't doing a good job as a leader, which made them even more unhappy. Many Californians were angry about the fires, and many of them agreed with Woods's complaints. People from the area took to social media to demand that state and local leaders be held accountable. People were especially angry about the dry fire hydrants, which were seen as a sign of how the system had failed and left communities defenseless. Many people said that the failures of 2025 were not one-time events, but a part of a larger pattern of bad management, and petitions and campaigns asking for investigations into the state's fire preparedness gained a lot of support. People in the state were angry about paying high taxes and wanted to know why those funds weren't being used better to fix important building platforms and problems. Many people wanted long-term changes to make California better prepared for disasters, so the calls for accountability went beyond the current crisis. Proposals included giving fire departments more money, keeping water systems in better shape, and making vegetation control programs stronger. For many, the wildfire situation made it clear that big changes needed to be made right away. As the fires burned and smoke filled the air, the people of Pacific Palisades had to face a terrifying truth. Many people were left with nothing but clothes on their backs after their homes were destroyed by fire. Even though there was so much damage, friends came together to help, shelter, and support each other. Woods, who is known for having strong and controversial opinions, was truly moved by the spirit of his community as a whole. He told stories about friends who worked non-stop to help people who were in immediate danger. People who barely knew each other stepped in to help elderly people get out of the area, save pets, and get them to safety. It wasn't about politics or social standing. It was about staying alive and being determined to help each other in times of trouble. In one very moving story, an old man in his 90s who lived alone and had a memory problem told the story. A lot of his friends came together to make sure he was safe as the fire rushed towards his house. They went into his house right away, got his things, and carried him to safety, putting their own safety at risk to save him. Woods said that this brave act showed how strong the community can be and called it a moment of pure kindness. Woods talked a lot about how the wildfire situation brought people together, which is something that doesn't happen very often in everyday life. As neighbors worked together to fight a shared enemy, their money, political views, and social standing didn't matter. He talked about how a deep sense of equality and community grew during these tough times. Woods said, "It didn't matter who you were, where you came from, or what you believed. We were just neighbors who lived next to each other and helped each other stay alive." This sense of unity went beyond helping each other physically. People who had already left their homes offered them to people who needed them. Others helped families who had lost everything by giving them food, clothes, and other things they needed. Some people organized the rescue efforts, worked with a fireman, and made sure that everyone in the community was safe. Woods said that these acts of teamwork and kindness showed the best in people. The wildfire disaster was a strong reminder of how important it is to work together during hard times in a world that is often divided by politics and social issues. During the crisis, stories of kindness and unity came to light, showing how strong and caring the community really is. In one of these stories, a single mother with 2 young children was not able to get out of the area in time. When the fire got close to their house, neighbors got together to help carry the family to safety. The group worked together to make sure the mother and their children got out there safely, even though it was very hot and there was a lot of smoke. In a different case, a family came home to find their house destroyed and was surprised by an act of kindness. A neighbor, who hadn't talked to them in a while, opened their home and gave them a place to stay, feed them, and give emotional support. Because the family had lost their home and everything in it, this act of kindness made all the difference. These stories weren't just about the Pacific Palisades area. In the same way, towns across California came together to show that the spirit of unity wasn't just in one neighborhood. Volunteers brought supplies to evacuation centers, and strangers gave money and other resources to families who had to leave their homes because of the wildfires. The disaster showed how generous and kind people really can be. In his talk, Woods talked about how the flames brought people together and created a sense of unity that went beyond the destruction. He talked about times when neighbors who had never met before became close because they were going through the same thing. These ties gave me strength and hope when I was going through a tough time. For Woods, the situation was a reminder of how important it is to work together to get through hard times. The flames showed that infrastructure and leadership were badly broken, but they also showed how strong and determined regular people are. He said that this sense of unity was what helped towns rebuild and get better in the long run. The feeling of community went beyond the local area. Social media was very important in getting people from all over the state and the world to help those who were affected. People and groups raised millions of dollars through crowdfunding to help people who had been affected by the wildfires. They also helped by giving victims food, clothes, and temporary housing. Businesses and groups in the area also did a lot to help families who had to move. First responders and people who had to leave their homes were given free meals at restaurants, and hotels opened their doors to provide temporary refuge. In a time that would have been very dark without these big and small efforts, they helped bring hope and comfort. Woods thought about what he had learned from the situation and emphasized how important it is to have community and compassion when dealing with problems. He talked about how the wildfire had changed his view and made him more sure of the idea that in times of disaster, it is the strength of the people working together that counts the most. Even though the flames caused a lot of damage, they also showed the best in people. Through the destruction, acts of kindness, bravery, and togetherness showed how powerful it is to work together. For Woods, these times showed how strong the human spirit is and how strong the ties are that bind us. When James Woods lost everything, Walton Goggins stepped up in a surprising way. Do you know the story behind their reunion? Celebrities unite to rebuild after the fires. The flames, which were caused by dry conditions and strong winds, destroyed many neighborhoods, including ones where famous people lived. Luxury homes like Pacific Palisades, Malibu, and others were hit hard by the fires, which destroyed multi-million-dollar homes and famous estates. Paris Hilton lost her longtime home in Beverly Hills, which was one of the people who was affected. The hotel owner and businesswoman shared pictures of her burned-out home on social media to show how devastated she was. Even though she was sad, Hilton used her fame to bring attention to the effects of the wildfires on a wider scale and asked her fans to give to help. A Hollywood power couple, Leighton Meester and Adam Brody, also had to deal with the destruction of the Pacific Palisades. The couple had just finished remodeling their house, giving it their own style and love. Meester wrote a touching post in which she talked about how their loss would never be replaced and how thankful she was that her family had been able to get away safely. Anna Faris, who is known for her comedic parts in movies and TV shows, lost her home in Malibu in the fires. Faris talked about how strange it was to see the flames coming toward her neighborhood and how breathtaking it was to come back and see nothing but ash. Like many others, she praised the work of first responders and asked people to give money to groups that help victims and emergency workers. A famous person who was also affected was Julia Louis-Dreyfus, whose home in the hills was destroyed. The Emmy-winning actress, best known for her parts in Veep and Seinfeld, thanked the firefighters who worked hard to put out the fires, even though she was sad that her property was destroyed. Anthony Hopkins, a veteran actor, was another famous person who was touched by the wildfires. His home on the coast, which was full of personal items and artwork, was destroyed. In his public comments, Hopkins stayed calm and stressed how important it is to put safety ahead of material things. He thanked everyone in the town for their help and said that the experience had brought people closer together. When the wildfires were over, a lot of famous people used social media and public speaking to thank first responders, aid groups, and the community as a whole. Even though they had lost so much, these stars mostly felt strong and grateful. Paris Hilton thanked firefighters and other emergency workers in public, calling them true heroes for putting their lives at risk to keep others safe. She talked about how hard these people worked. They worked non-stop to save as many lives and homes as they could. Hilton also used her fame to bring attention to groups that were helping people, like the California Fire Foundation and the Red Cross. Leighton Meester and Adam Brody said the same things. They both said in a statement how thankful they were for the firemen who had worked so hard to keep their neighborhood safe. Another thing they said was nice about their neighbors was how they stuck together during the crisis. They said it gave them hope during a very bad time. Anna Faris, who has long fought for mental health and community support, talked about how important it is to be strong and get better. She used social media to ask people to donate to local shelters and food banks. stressing how important it was to help families who had to move and people who had lost everything. While she was sad about her loss, she sent a word of thanks to the firefighters and volunteers who worked to put out the fires. She asked her fans to help with the relief efforts and said that the strength of the community was that it could help each other in times of trouble. Anthony Hopkins, who was known for being calm and philosophical, gave a message that made people think about how temporary things are. Even though he was sad about losing his house, he was thankful for his safety and the work of those who helped save others. Anthony Hopkins told his fans that they should help others and that even small acts of kindness can make a big difference. In addition to thanking people personally, a lot of famous people helped with relief efforts by using their power and resources to help communities that were hit hard. As the stars of Hollywood tried to help those affected by the accidents, they often took part in public advocacy, donation drives, and campaigns to raise money. Paris Hilton said she would be giving a lot of money to help wildfire victims and teamed up with local groups to get families who had to move basic things. She also planned a fundraiser with other famous people and community leaders to bring attention to the situation and raise money for the ongoing healing efforts. Leighton Meester and Adam Brody gave money to help people in their neighborhood rebuild, especially those who had lost everything. The couple also helped out at a nearby shelter by giving people who had to evacuate food and supplies. Fans liked how involved they were, and they praised how dedicated they were to their community. Anna Faris worked with a number of nonprofits to send care gifts to people who had been affected by wildfires. She also put together a virtual charity performance with musicians and other famous people, and all the money raised went to help with the disaster. The event brought in a lot of money and showed how important it is to work together in times of trouble. Julia Louise-Dreyfus took part in a statewide effort to call for better planning and response to disasters. She worked with lawmakers and community leaders to fix systemic problems that had made the wildfire so destructive. Her work was meant to make sure that the disaster's lessons would lead to real change. Anthony Hopkins didn't speak out as much in public campaigns, but he did give a lot of money to local nonprofits and groups that helped wildfire survivors with their mental health. He stressed how important it was to deal with the emotional effects of these kinds of tragedies, especially for children and families who had been through a lot. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more updates on breaking news and celebrity reactions. Stay tuned for the latest stories. Don't miss out.